So before you start, we have a question dedicated exclusively for you. Are you all set? Give me a thumbs up if you agree. Fantastic. So ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tan is an alum of National University of Singapore. Not only just that, he's also working there as a mentor for their research program. So Mr. Tan, the rapid fire question.
Sure.
All right. So in one word, please tell us. The very first question is, what is the star quality about NUS that you went back post-graduating?
I think it's a very dynamic culture there. I think they are really emphasizing a lot on the. Of course, now it's like we are in the digital economy, right? So one thing that about technology is not enough. Why can't we create a job? We create so-called a platform so that everyone can collaborate, everyone can share and grow together.
Fantastic answer, Mr. Tan. You sound like the brand ambassador of NUS. And the second question, what is the star quality about Mr. Aaron Tan that NUS keeps calling you back?
Well, I graduated from there about, I think, 2009. So how many years? I took my mathematics about maybe 20 over years, right? So I think now I have already a venture in terms of the experience, also the knowledge and exposure. I think I've grown a lot. So I think, they basically, they call me back to look into a mentoring postgraduate student, right? In terms of the coaching them, guiding them, and basically is doing a mentoring.
Fantastic answer, Mr. Tan. You sound like a very modest leader. If I was in your position, I'd say, because I'm amazing. That's it, full stop. Fantastic answer, Mr. Tan. Stage is all yours. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So let me just share my screen now. Very good morning or good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity for me to share about the topics about driving innovation through digital enterprise architecture. Because I think I have come a long way to in terms of my career path in so-called how to better use or make use of the technology for a strategic advantage to help business. I think that's the key so-called focus in this today digital era. Of course, now many organizations are also focusing on the driving innovation, because when they innovate, they can propel their business. They can also outrun their competitors, right? So basically, the idea is here. This actually, if you see the date there on the left top corner, is 7 October 2014. Okay, so maybe you can be asking why you're splashing like already 8 years ago article. But I think Gartner made a very good so-called prediction back in the 2014 that on the 2025, which is I think like 4 years from now, that enterprises will be super connected, right? You can see here, like inside out, outside in, and outside out, right? So basically, whatever we do, everything got the dependency. They have the impact analysis. So meaning is that the organization, of course, now talking about the pandemic, right? In the last 2 years, we have no choice. We can work anywhere and anytime. I think you hear just now from the panelists discussing about how we start the right on the digital transformation. So this is basically the ultimate view that every organization should have, right? They cannot just have their only internal processes or function or dependency. They also need to know external and external, right? So basically, this is the prediction in the 2014 for 2025. I think now with the COVID-19 that struck us last year, I think this is now. We cannot wait any more longer than that. And of course, this is another interesting, I think, finding. I think you can just Google it or find out so many research that many digital transformation journey actually not going anywhere. Okay, this is the reality of life. Because what happened is that they're still doing the same thing as what they've been doing in the last 20 years. But except they use the title of their project title to become, they got the word digital and transformation. Because why? If you don't have these two keywords, your project will not get approved. But the method is still the same, right? So basically, of course, if that's happening, is 80% of our digital transformation journey, it will fail. Because you see just now in the previous slide, the complexity and dependency are humongous, right? And of course, fail again, right? Then by the time 2025, I think 80% fail, and only 20% can be successful, right? And those who are successful, basically, they have some sort of architecture in place to drive their transformation, because they cannot do just the ad hoc transformation initiative, all need to be consolidated into a single platform. Yeah? And of course, this is the message. Transforming digitally means working differently. We cannot use the same culture, the same technique method that we used to have and label it as a transformation project. If it is what many happening now, but we really need to change the entire our working culture and the method. So this is basically the analogy pictures on the, if you run the digital transformation today as a silo without the architecture, at the end you will end up into the digital island. I think you know, we all know the concept of bespoke or island of system, right? Eventually it's worse. They got island of digital application, etc. And go into the cloud and they are not connected. That one I don't know how to resolve, but it's happening now. So we need to have some sort of method to consolidate all this. So that method, we call it enterprise architecture. And of course, this is the era of digitalization. I think has already ended in the 2010. So now, the era of digitalization actually started in 2010. Before that is computerization, right? Then of course, we have faced many challenges. So there are many questions that we need to answer. If you go into the particular meeting with the key stakeholders, they're always asking about, you know, what's the impact of our strategic driver? What are the current gap that we have? How can we do better? What opportunity can we seize in this today transformation, right? And what capability are we required, right? And how many resources that we need? And how to sustain and develop new capability? And of course, talking about investment portfolio, we have invested a lot, right? If you are a medium, even medium to large company, you have invested maybe in 10 or 100 of millions on your entire IT infrastructure and application. But when can we reap the benefit on that, right? Which a project that actually we can sustain or transit or retire? So all these questions need to be answered. And of course, answering one question, it will lead to the next question. So how do we answer all these once for all, right? So this is where the enterprise architecture, I think, playing a critical role in the organization, where the entire strategic planning on the business, ICT, your portfolio, your risk management, your procurement, your technology lifecycle, your change management, your project and portfolio can be consolidated and also can be so-called monitored, right? Because EA, actually enterprise architecture, can play a role of a command and control. I think if you know, if you are in the war, command and control is where the general office is. So enterprise architecture team should have been empowered and of course must deliver the right thing, right? So that you can so-called gain the trust and can advise the organization. I think one of the Gartner advisory is that EA team should be acting as the management consulting team internally to the key stakeholders. So this actually is the heavy mandate that architect need to carry. And of course, this is where the model is. So once you have the so-called enterprise architecture platform, you can actually use that to address multiple concerns of the stakeholders. Because every stakeholders in the organization have a different concerns. If you are the business architect, you're looking at the entire business capability, business process. If you're chief digital officer, you're looking at all the digitalization in terms of how to build a so-called intimate relationship with our customer. That's also the concern of the chief customer officer. And if you're enterprise architect or portfolio solution, you need to know the entire application landscape, your business architecture landscape, your technology architecture landscape, your solution architecture landscape, right? And if you're the investment manager, you want to know that what are the projects currently ongoing, right? And how much would the investment and what is the ROI to me? And you're the chief risk officer. You also want to know about what sort of the risk exposure that we have, right? Should anything happen, how can I mitigate this, right? Can enterprise architecture answer me this? And for your CIO, basically, you manage the entire portfolio and also the ongoing initiative of your in-flight digital transformation realization project. And this is what happened that many organizations that I mentioned earlier that, you know, they go straight from the digital strategy, go into the digital transformation. So if you do that, I think the chances of success is very little because the complexity in the transformation is huge, right? Anything that you already deploy, you want to fix it back, you have to, you know, you have to spend maybe 2 times or 3 times more than what the cost to build a particular solution. So what you need to do actually is that we look at the so-called enterprise architecture itself to understand the impact, right? To understand in terms of their business impact, data impact, application technology, and consolidate the impact into the gaps, right? The gaps eventually will be packaged into the work packages and become a project. And the project, we put it into the, you know, we basically work closely with the PMO to run a digital transformation. Yeah, so this is basically the model rather than go straight into the transformation from the strategy and you put architecture inside the transformation. So if you do that, it's like something like you repairing a car while driving on the highway. So we should repair the car in the workshop first until everything's stable, and you can go bring the car into the circuit or into the racetrack or into driving long distance. So the model basically is that how you can connect between strategy, business, and technology. So we need basically to have a fully digitally connected enterprise. So basically any changes in any layers, we know exactly what's impacted. So for instance, in this morning, if the senior management having a strategy change, you know exactly which are the business function, business processes, your data, your application and infrastructure will be impacted. And what are those? That's very, very important, because what happened is that in today digital era is the information need to be so-called decision also need to be decided in the fast phase. In the past, we can wait 4 months and 5 months. Now the most I can give you 2-3 hours. You tell me the impact. Okay. So with that, we can run a successful transformation, because the key is that transformation. Digital transformation is not the same like executing IT project, but it has all the wealth of the information, connectivity, and also the dependency. So behind the scene actually is where we need to integrate between business and IT strategy. Then from there, we understand all the gaps, right? The gap in the business, information, application, and technology. So the gap is where we are packaging that into the project. So as simple as that, right? But many people are just straight waiting, oh, I want to have this strategy and I think I have this initiative. So after that, they pass it to the PMO, right? The project management team. So PMO will decide how much will that cost, how long it run, and they execute the project. So they got lacking on the number 2, the architecture part, where they need to analyze the entire impact and dependency and also consolidating all the gap. And of course, prioritize on the business need, driver, and the strategy. So the model is where on the left side is where the typical enterprise. If you can just simplify your enterprise, basically, of course, consists of the knowledge, all your practices, your intellectual property, your people, your staffing, your process, right, your SOP, and also your technology that's supporting the entire enterprise. And of course, the capability and value and etc. So, however, if you have this, if you look at this enterprise, for instance, that you are putting the second layers there, right? Do you know what the third layer or the fourth layer is? Very, very difficult, right? In the enterprise, typically, I only work for my department. I only know my department. I know my department connect to the other department, but I'm not so sure how am I going to how the other department is working, right? That's why the concept of the digital enterprise map is like GPS, right? You can navigate. So basically, in every initiative on the digital transformation, we need to know exactly their motivation and strategy layer. Okay, what actually the goal? What are the driver? What are the capability? What are the resources? Then after that, we also need to know the impact to the business. That's very, very important. So when we do this, we haven't started the project yet, but we analyzing in terms of the architecture. Like it's something like you have the feel of the land and you're trying to build a 20-story building, right? So you can visualize and understand all the whole soil structure, your the direction and etc. Okay, the design. Then after that, you look at your application layers, right? What are the application? Can we reuse? Can we convert? Can we migrate? Can we merge? Same thing with the technology itself. So whether we're going to the private cloud, whether we go to hybrid cloud, whether we're going to in between like on-premise and etc. And of course the information architecture is also very, very important, right? The data layers. So we need to know how the information flow. And the last part is where how we can execute the project well, because this is where the bottom part is where your transformation become real, right? Call it implementation or project layers. So everything can be defined and connected and modeled in this manner. So the concept is something like this aeroplane, right? This aeroplane basically, if you can imagine, this is a digital aeroplane. So all the components actually are exposed in the diagram, right? So anything that, any part that are not working, we know exactly which are the part impacted. And we also know serial number. We also know the information about that part, right? So the same thing with the right-hand side, the iPad. I believe you're familiar with this. And have you ever thought that someone need to draw the meta model like this? Right? The view and the viewpoints. So the architecture, so you can imagine that the iPad is your enterprise. right? And of course, iPad also interface with the internet and can connect everywhere, right? Can download the application. The same thing with our enterprise. So you can imagine this parallel analogy. Yeah, someone need to draw this so-called motherboard. Yeah, so this way the architects playing a critical role to connect the dot within the enterprises. And this is an example on the so-called meta model that need to be in place if you want to go through the transformation successfully, because this is something like in the layman term, if those who are not familiar, is like database schema, right? But this database schema for your enterprise. Because if you don't have this, then everyone will run, we have duplicate record, right? Imagine that if you ever go through the like CRM consolidation, if you ever use Excel spreadsheet, there will be many duplicate. Same thing now in the enterprise today. If you don't have this meta model in place, there will be many duplication, right? Even your digital transformation, actually at the end, it will end up into the digital island. It's the same like, any other application. So with this type of the model, you can actually, if you see on the left-hand side, they got the model on the motivation, right? On the motivation, strategy, business, application, technology, and implementation and migration. So these are so-called the layers of the enterprise that we need to define. So for instance, in terms of the motivation, we can understand that what make our key stakeholders embark into this initiative. We need to know that, right? Then after that, we also need to know what strategy, winning strategy that they have already put in place, right? And you can see here on the laptop, and how that one supported by the capability. And capability, we can understand also the capability actually residing in the which department in our enterprise, and how that capability actually supported by the processes, by the information, by the application, and also by how can this make our customer interaction or customer journey better, and what are the technology in place now. So all these are very so-called basic question that I think many of the enterprises today has overlooked the matter, because in the past when they do a typical project or computerization, they never thought about this connectivity, how to get a digitally connected enterprise. So this example on the using a strategy to model so-called the concern, the driver of the key stakeholders. The key stakeholder driver, if you can see here, they want to be the world best airport, right? But let's zoom in from the bottom. The bottom part is where the strategy. The strategy is that there are many strategy. One of the strategy is that to come up with the effective and efficient system for operation strategy. Why that's important? Because with that one in strategy in place, we need to ensure the outcome is achieved, right? So what's the outcome? You see on the left here, timely and accurate data for decision-making process. This is very important. When you want to be at that efficient, the data need to be available almost instantly, right? Maybe not real time, but almost instantly, right? The most delay maybe 1 hour, not like few days data, right? And then of course that one need to be supported by the capability integrated information management. Then on the right hand side is the process streamline and productivity increase. That's also very important, and that one need to be supported by the capability optimized process management, because organizations always try to improve their so-called process re-engineering, right, or re-architecting. Then with that outcome, we can achieve couple of goals, right? Improve passenger satisfaction, higher passenger traffic volume, and eventually, of course, with all that, improve air traffic. And of course, on the right-hand side, in terms of the process streamline, can also make it efficient airport and also private airport by airline operator. So airline operator think like, I better transit in this airport than any other neighboring country airport. Because why? Very efficient. Everything is very smooth, very fast, right? And of course, with that, can be the world-best airport. With the world-best airport status, then you are less worried about passenger choosing other airport, or airline operator choosing other lower-cost airport. Okay? So these are the way to model and communicate a strategy, for example. And of course, this is also another way on the how we can get the so-called connected view on the business application and technology. So we understand that if any particular process get issue, we know exactly which application and technology supporting that, right? So for instance, on the left-hand side, we can troubleshoot the yellow one. I think just now I highlighted the business side, right? How the processes like handling the claim and supported by what application, and we can zoom in the application to the next level, right? Of course, you can also put a dashboard into it. So the model is basically, instead of the project management and IT service, right? We need to have so-called our enterprise architecture office to provide guideline, to consolidate all the gap, the work packages, so that the project team can execute the digital transformation project. And of course, the support team also, digital service operation, can support the system. Okay. Of course, the bottom part is where there is a need to have a digital EA repository as a single source of truth. Yeah? And the top part is where the business and technology need to be together. So the context, it is where digital enterprise architecture, the word digital today is that because enterprise architecture has evolved in the last 10 years, quite so-called has revolutionized from the traditional EA to become digital EA. Digital EA means they have a platform to run, much more intelligent than in the past. They're doing the governance, right? So basically, it's of course the domain is still the same. They got the business architecture, application, technology, and data architecture. And of course, not to forget the security and digital service and integration architecture. That's also part of the architecture today. And with that, of course, we can drive the so-called digital transformation and also provide an execution framework. That's very, very important. So that all the project can align and also consistent in terms of their successful outcome. Then, of course, once you have the architecture, you need to develop a solution. Because why? The solution itself will be handed over to the PMO team for the execution there on the left top corner. So the model is enterprise architecture actually is the concept of digital transformation with the EA, actually the concept of the journey, right? So we always moving from the SEs to the target. Yeah? So of course the bottom part is where we look at the transition 1, transition 2. I mean, you can call it phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, but this more on the like in the transformation project because of the journey, we call it transition rather than the phases. Okay, so the middle part is where we are using the technique. I think this method are quite generic, right? Basically, first thing first, you need to understand the business fit. We need to understand also application fit, right? So basically, when you talk about business fit, you're talking about SWOT, PESTEL, for example, right? And then application fit, talking about business, application usage, technology, looking at the end of support, end of life, and capability, looking at all the business and technology capability metrics. And of course, the most important part is digital transformation fit, right? We need to know dependency metric because we need to know whether this transformation actually create value. Basically, we don't want to create island. We want to create a connected platform. Yeah. So yeah, with that, I think let me just play the video. It's basically a video about myself, right? So basically, I'm also representing enterprise architecture chapters. I'm the president of the chapters with the Singapore Computer Society. So let's just watch this 3-minute video. Then after that, I will hand over back to Nikita.
In the Lamentum 30 years ago was organization structure, org structure. Okay, but I want to have the digital map that I can ask. So if I tell you that you are Mr. So and you are from that department, so can I just open digital map? I want to know what is your role, and I can also find out which are the department that you are working closely in your enterprise. Okay, and I can also find out what actually your SOP, your day-to-day job. Okay, are you approving? If yes, you're who approving it? What processes do you do? And after that, I also want to know which IT system that's supporting it. Okay, if you can give me that answer in 5 minutes, you don't need EA. Done. Many people said EA is a project. I have done my EA 3 years ago. Here are the proof, right? And most of the case is that the EA that they have done is in a static book, okay, static deliverable. As soon as you printed that static book, immediately obsolete. The second part, many people think EA is can eliminate the complexity. Okay, the fact is not the word eliminating, but it's managing. Okay, how can now we manage that complexity and we do better than the rest? The third one, of course, people say that enterprise architecture is only for IT team. Okay, that is totally the myth. It was correct 20 years ago. You talk about architecture word, pass it to the IT team. But now, the enterprise architecture involve, the stakeholders, key stakeholders, the decision maker. Then involve a motivation of all the divisional head and also strategy, capability of the business. If the company don't have this type of so-called adoption on the architecture concept, they will not go anywhere because the world is moving very, very fast. So So how fast can you respond? That is the question that we need to ask. With the EA, you can respond it quite quickly because you know exactly that I need to change my entire product offering, and the digital map will tell you like the GPS, right? It tell you, okay, these are 20 processes impacted, these are 3 departments impacted, these are the IT system that need to change. And you quickly make a decision within a day. What are you going to do? Without EA, you still can make a decision that may take weeks or months, depending on how big is your enterprise. Moving forward, the complexities and the digital complexity is exponential. And there must be some way to manage this. And you cannot do it the way we used to do it in the past. The benefit is that networking, I think, is very, very important. We believe that we can learn. I don't think we claim that we know everything. That's why we need to get the input from the industry, and they can do some validation, like check and balance.
Right. Nikita, I hand over to you.
What a session, Mr. Tan. Of course, like the tradition at 𝐃𝐫𝐢𝐯𝐲, you have to clap for yourselves along with us because that was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
I think the best takeaway was ask more questions to get more answers. What a golden line that was, Mr. Tan. Fantastic. Thank you so very much for gracing our session with your presence today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, after that fantastic session, of course, we have to have a look at your fantastic, amazing comments. So we start off with Mohammed Erilo Giovanni Putra D. By the way, that has to be the most amazing name that I've ever heard. Wow, Mr. Mohammed Erilo Giovanni Putra D. What a beautiful name you have. Erilo. If you could just let us know in the comment box, what does Erilo mean? Because it sounds like a very, very exotic word. We have Jaden Yap who writes in, thank you for joining this panel session, fill in a short survey, and oh my God, rarely does it happen that the anchor is envious of the audience. Because if you fill this short survey, you stand a chance to win a portable coffee machine. The things I do just to be in your place. So ladies and gentlemen, go ahead, fill the survey form, and yes, stand a chance. I know you are the lucky one. Stand a chance to win a portable coffee machine. We have Akashi Malhotra who writes in, join us to learn how Aspire InfoLabs total experience approach help leading global financial education, healthcare, and utilities. Basically, Akashi is saying Aspire InfoLabs will help you for accelerating your growth, any industry you are in. Akashi, let me know whether the deduction was correct or not. We have Larry Santos who writes in, fantastic, very informative session. Can you share the slides, please? That was for Mr. Tan. Mr. Tan, we'd love for you to connect with Larry Santos. And yes,
yeah, we share the slide.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Mr. Tan, I request you to kindly head to the comment box or the chat section and get in touch with Mr. Larry. I would request you to get in touch with Mr. Tan.
Thank you.